Imagine for a moment that there is a hidden force guiding many of your thoughts, your desires, even the choices you make, and you don't even realize it. Now think about how much of your behavior is influenced not by logic, not by conscious decision, but by something primal, something ancient, something deeply buried in the recesses of your mind. What if I told you that this force has everything to do with sex? Not in the act itself, but in the psychological energy it represents. Today, we'll uncover a truth that many resist, but none escape. The undeniable power of sexuality over the human psyche, and what the legendary Karl Jung discovered about what you're suppressing. Stay with me, because the final insight, the one in part 4, is the most transformative of all. It reveals not just why this force is in control, but how you can reclaim that power to change your life. Sex, a word that triggers a cascade of reactions: desire, shame, confusion, power. But why? Why does it hold such weight in the human mind? The answer begins with a question: is sex merely a physical need, or is it the gateway to something much deeper? Carl Jung believed it was far more than biological. He saw sexuality as a symbolic expression of psychic energy, what he called the libido, not just sexual desire, but the raw life force that fuels all creativity, emotion, and action. This idea shattered the narrower view of his predecessor Freud, who focused primarily on sexual repression as the root of neurosis. Jung went further. He argued that sexual energy, when misunderstood, denied, or misdirected, becomes a shadow force that distorts our behavior, our relationships, and our self-standing. Think of how society treats sexuality: censored, commodified, exploited, repressed. What happens when something so fundamental to our being is not consciously integrated into who we are? It doesn't disappear, it hides. And from that hidden place, it begins to manipulate us. Jung called this the shadow, the part of ourselves we reject, suppress, or ignore. And within the shadow lies our unknown sexuality. This means the parts of our sexual identity, our fantasies, our desires, our vulnerabilities, all the pieces we've learned to shame or deny, continue to live within us. Only now they control us from the dark. Ask yourself how much of your behavior, your insecurities, your emotional reactions, your judgments of others are influenced by desires and fears you haven't fully explored. How much of your inner conflict stems from your attempt to separate yourself from your own instincts? Jung observed that the repression of sexuality doesn't purify the soul, it fragments it. And this fragmentation leads to what modern psychologists now recognize as a form of inner disconnection, a gap between our conscious persona and the unconscious forces that drive us. Let's dive deeper. The persona, your social mask, is what you show to the world. It's curated, controlled, accepted. But underneath that mask, in the subconscious mind, are aspects you don't want others to see. Sexual shame often becomes a dominant part of that. And here's the danger. What is not owned consciously becomes projected outward. You see it in others. You judge it in them. You're triggered by it. But it's really a mirror, a reflection of your own denied parts. This is why Jung insisted that personal growth requires individuation. The process of integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self, including and especially our sexual energy. What you suppress controls you, but what you integrate empowers you. So many people seek spiritual growth, emotional healing, even creative inspiration, without realizing they are cut off from the very source that fuels all three. That source is the libido, the creative sexual energy that doesn't just want release, but expression. When it's ignored, it distorts into obsession, shame, fear, or addiction. When it's embraced, it becomes vitality, confidence, and depth. But how do we begin to recognize what we've suppressed? Start by noticing your reactions. What makes you uncomfortable in others? What makes you angry or overly curious? These are signs. Your unconscious is always trying to speak in dreams, in fantasies, in projection. Jung analyzed dreams for this very reason. They reveal the symbols of our inner world, unfiltered by our waking defenses. And sex in dreams rarely means just sex. It often symbolizes union, not with another, but between parts of the self. So what are you avoiding uniting within? Jung believed that within each man is the anima, the inner feminine, and within each woman the animus, the inner masculine. These archetypes are deeply tied to how we experience love, intimacy, and connection. When undeveloped, they create dysfunction in relationships. When developed, they guide us to deeper wholeness. But this development requires confronting sexual and emotional shadows, not escaping them. Do you see now how much of your life is silently shaped by what you haven't allowed yourself to feel? Sexual repression isn't just about moral values. It's about psychological fragmentation. It's about losing access to a part of your life force. The modern world often swings between two extremes, overexposure and over-restriction. But real integration is neither indulgence nor denial. It's consciousness. It's seeing sexual energy for what it truly is. Not a threat, not a sin, but a signal from the soul. As we continue, we'll explore how this energy shapes your identity, your purpose, and your relationships. We'll look at the real reasons society keeps you disconnected from your sexual truth. And most importantly, we'll reveal what you can do to begin reclaiming that power. Not to be ruled by it, but to be transformed by it. Before we move forward, ask yourself, what part of me have I silenced out of fear of judgment? What desire have I buried, believing it to be wrong? And what could change in my life if I stopped running from it? Because in understanding what you've suppressed, you may finally begin to understand who you really are. Now that we've opened the door to the hidden depths of sexual energy in the psyche, we must step further into the labyrinth of human behavior, where desire and denial dance in the shadows, and where most people lose themselves without even knowing it. If sexuality represents one of the most powerful forces in the human mind, then why do so many fear to look at it honestly? Why is it so heavily regulated by culture, religion, and even self-identity? Carl Jung knew why. Because sexuality is not just about pleasure. It's about power. And power, when unconscious, is dangerous. The libido, as Jung understood it, is the life energy that fuels our capacity to connect, to create, to feel, to be. But what happens when this force is suppressed for too long? It doesn't disappear. It morphs. It distorts. It becomes anxiety, compulsive behaviors, secret obsessions, even violent outbursts. Jung wrote that whatever we repress becomes part of the shadow, and the longer it stays hidden, the more chaotic it becomes when it tries to break through. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by a sudden emotion, a craving, a fear, and not knowing where it came from? These are signs that something in your unconscious is trying to speak. Sexual repression isn't just a personal struggle, it's a collective inheritance. From religious dogmas that equated desire with sin, to modern hypersexualized media that commodifies and objectifies it, we are trapped in a paradox. On one hand, sex is everywhere, on screens, in advertisements, in casual conversations, and yet, true, honest conversations about sexual energy, intimacy, shame, and emotional connection are rare. We see the body, but not the soul within it. Jung warned that the more disconnected we are from our inner truth, the more we become controlled by the archetypes we haven't integrated. The prostitute, the seducer, the victim, the dominator. These are not just social roles. They are psychic patterns that act out through us when our relationship with sexuality is immature or repressed. So the question is not whether sex controls your mind, it's how much of that control is unconscious. Let's go deeper. There is a profound difference between sexuality and sensuality. Sensuality is the capacity to feel deeply, to engage with life through the senses. It is the root of intimacy, not just with others, but with yourself and with existence. When we suppress sexual energy, we don't just lose pleasure, we lose presence. We become detached, anxious, numb. we seek distractions, addictions, or hyperstimulation to compensate for the inner disconnection. Jung believed that healing begins with bringing awareness to what has been exiled, to look at it not with judgment, but with curiosity. Why do you feel what you feel? Who taught you to see your body, your desire, your needs as something shameful or dangerous? And more importantly, what would it look like to reclaim that part of you, not through rebellion, but through integration? One of the most powerful tools Jung used to explore the unconscious was dream analysis. In dreams, symbols bypass the defenses of the waking mind. Sex in a dream rarely points to physical desire. More often, it points to psychological union, the desire for integration. When you dream of intimacy, of connection, or even of taboo experiences, your unconscious may be trying to reveal where your inner masculine and feminine aspects are divided. The union of opposites, what Jung called the conjunctio, is a central theme in psychological alchemy. It's the merging of light and shadow, male and female, desire and reason. And in every individual, this inner marriage must occur if one is to become whole. So ask yourself again, what do my dreams reveal about my hidden desires? What fantasies do I judge but secretly long to understand? What part of myself have I been afraid to welcome home? Our culture has trained us to fear this exploration. It rewards surface-level stimulation but punishes depth. This is no accident. A person connected to their true sexual energy, not manipulated by it, but harmonized with it, becomes powerful. Why? Because they are no longer controlled by shame. They are no longer easily manipulated by external validation. They stop seeking approval from systems that thrive on disconnection. This is why reclaiming your suppressed sexual energy is not just personal, it is revolutionary, it is spiritual, it is psychological liberation. Modern psychologists have echoed Jung's insights. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, in his work The Body Keeps the Score, shows how trauma, especially sexual trauma, or repression, embeds itself in the nervous system, influencing behavior, emotional regulation, and self-perception. The only way out is through awareness, through embodiment, through feeling what you were told not to feel. We cannot heal what we do not face, and we cannot face what we do not acknowledge exists. The moment you stop running from your own sexuality, you begin to uncover something sacred, your truth. And truth doesn't always look like what you expect. It may come with pain, with grief, with rage, but beneath it is power. Because that which has been suppressed the longest is often the very energy you need to heal, to grow, to become. You are not meant to live in fragments. You are not meant to be ruled by secret forces. You are meant to become whole. And wholeness requires courage. In the next part, we will uncover how this energy affects your relationships, not just romantic ones, but your connection to others and to yourself. We'll reveal why most people are trapped in patterns of attraction that reflect their wounds rather than their desires. And most importantly, we'll show how to begin breaking free from those patterns to experience true intimacy. But before we move forward, reflect on this. What would your life look like if you stopped fearing your own depth? Who might you become if you embraced every part of your being, even the parts that once scared you? You don't have to answer out loud, but let those questions echo inside you, because they are not just questions. They are invitations to see, to feel, to transform. Now that we've explored the profound influence of suppressed sexual energy on the psyche, it's time to examine how this energy affects something just as central to our lives: relationships. Because what you repress within yourself doesn't stay silent. It speaks through the way you love, the way you desire, and the way you suffer. Carl Jung believed that relationships serve as mirrors, revealing what is unresolved within us. We are drawn not merely to people we love, but to those who activate unconscious material we haven't yet integrated. Think about it. How often have you found yourself inexplicably drawn to someone? Someone who excites you, frustrates you, even hurts you, and yet you can't seem to walk away. This is not coincidence, it's projection. Jung taught that projection is the process by which we place our own unrecognized qualities, desires, fears, wounds onto another person. And nowhere is this more active than in romantic and sexual relationships. When we have not confronted our own shadow, we fall in love with what seems missing in us. The partner becomes a symbol of our hidden self. This is why passion can be so intense, because it's not just about them. It's about you trying to reunite with what you've lost inside. The problem is, when the illusion fades, we often feel betrayed. But it wasn't them who changed, it was the projection dissolving. And what's left is the raw truth. Two people, each carrying their own shadows, each hoping the other will heal what they themselves have avoided. This is why sexual repression is not just a personal issue, it's a relational wound. When you are disconnected from your own desire, your own emotional body, your own sensuality, you cannot truly meet another. You can only perform connection, not feel it. True intimacy, emotional, psychological, and physical, requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is impossible when shame dominates your inner world. So ask yourself now, in my relationships, am I showing up fully or just performing the version of myself I think is acceptable? Do I allow others to truly see me, or only the parts I've learned to control? What part of me am I still afraid to share because I haven't fully accepted it myself? Jung believed that wholeness comes not from perfection, but from integration. That means loving even what seems unlovable in us, our need, our pain, our hunger. This is the path of individuation, becoming a unified self, not a fragmented performance. Consider how much of modern dating and relationships are built on image management. We curate our personas, suppress our real needs, and fear that if someone saw our raw truth, they would leave. But the real tragedy is not that others might leave. It's that we abandon ourselves in the process. This abandonment begins with disconnection from sexual truth. Many people equate sex with performance, with validation, with control. But sexuality, when awakened, is none of those things. It is presence. It is vulnerability. It is surrender not to another, but to the moment, to the self, to the divine intelligence of the body. The body doesn't lie. When you're safe, it softens. When you're in fear, it tightens. When you're disconnected, it numbs. And all of this, every sensation, every reaction, is information. Your body is the unconscious speaking through sensation. When you listen, you begin to awaken. When you ignore it, you live in confusion. Carl Jung's work shows us that the psyche longs for balance. The unconscious is always seeking conscious realization. And when sexuality is pushed into the dark, it doesn't disappear. It erupts through jealousy, manipulation, infidelity, self-sabotage, and in many cases, through deep loneliness, even in the presence of others. Many people today are lonely not because they lack love, but because they have no true intimacy. They have not allowed themselves to be fully known, even by themselves. Think of the last time you felt truly seen, not just admired, but understood. Not desired for a mask, but cherished for your essence. That is the kind of connection that becomes possible when we stop hiding from our shadow. And sexual energy, when embraced consciously, becomes the bridge from isolation to union, from shame to sacredness. This is not about hedonism, this is about healing. It is about reclaiming the part of you that was never meant to be silenced, the part that is creative, passionate, alive. In ancient traditions, this energy was revered. In Tantra, for example, sexual energy is seen as a sacred force, a doorway to higher consciousness. Not because of the act, but because of the surrender, the intensity, the presence. It requires a total merging of body, mind, and soul. Jung saw similar themes in alchemy, the symbolic transformation of base matter into gold. He believed the true alchemical process was psychological. You take what is unconscious, chaotic, repressed, and you transmute it through awareness. The lead becomes gold. The sexual shadow becomes sacred power. But to do this, you must first face what you feared: the guilt, the pain, the confusion. You must meet the younger version of yourself, the one who learned that desire was wrong, or that love meant danger, or that pleasure was not safe. And you must offer that version compassion, not judgment. Because without compassion, there is no healing. And without healing, you will keep playing out the same patterns over and over with different faces, hoping for a different outcome. What would your relationships look like if you stopped projecting your shadow and started integrating it? What kind of intimacy could you create if you loved yourself enough to show up fully unmasked? And how might your entire life change if you stop suppressing the very force that gives you life? In the final part, we will reveal the most important and powerful truth of all, the one that has the potential to shift your understanding not just of sexuality, but of your entire existence. A revelation that ties everything we've explored into a single transformative insight. Until then, let this echo inside you. You were never meant to be split in two. Performer and self, mask and soul. You were meant to become whole. And that wholeness begins when you stop running from what you are and start listening to what you've been trying not to feel. Now we arrive at the most important and powerful truth of all, the revelation that ties everything together. Throughout this journey, we've seen how suppressed sexual energy becomes shadow. We've seen how it distorts our perceptions, shapes our relationships, and keeps us living from a place of fear instead of truth. But the deepest realization is this: the sexual energy you've been taught to fear is the same energy that creates worlds. This is not metaphor. This is the literal truth of life itself. Carl Jung believed that the libido, the core psychic energy, is not just about sexuality. It is the source of creativity, spirituality, vitality, and inner purpose. When you repress it, you don't just suppress desire, you suppress the fire of your own becoming. This is the tragedy of modern life. We are taught to be productive, but not passionate, to be efficient, but not embodied, to be social, but not soulful. And in this distortion, we become half alive, functional, but fractured. But here's the revelation. The energy you suppress is the same energy that can awaken you. When you reclaim it, not in lust, not in rebellion, but in reverence, you begin to return to your true self. You begin to feel, to imagine, to create, to love fully. Because this energy is not about sex alone, it is about union. And union is the secret of everything. Union between body and soul, between masculine and feminine, between shadow and light, between you and the divine. This is why Jung saw sexuality as symbolic of something far greater, the longing of the soul to reunite with its source. In the psychology of the transference, Jung writes about the alchemical marriage, the symbolic joining of opposites within the self, the conio. This is not just psychological theory, it is the roadmap to human evolution. When you bring together the fragmented parts of your psyche, the rejected, the shamed, the hidden, you begin to radiate wholeness. And from that wholeness, everything changes. You stop chasing relationships that mirror your wounds. You stop performing versions of yourself that are not real. You stop fearing desire and instead channel it toward creation. Imagine living like that. Imagine waking up not in conflict with your own body, your own emotions, your own hunger for life, but in alignment. Imagine that your very longing is not something to fix, but something to follow. Because desire at its core is not a weakness, it is guidance. The desire to connect, to touch, to feel, to express, these are not problems, they are portals. Every great artist, every true mystic, every visionary soul has known this. That the energy that stirs beneath the surface is the same energy that gives birth to vision. You cannot separate your soul from your sensuality. You cannot rise spiritually while shaming your instincts. You cannot create a life of depth and meaning while living in hiding from your own power. This is the final truth. The thing you are taught to suppress is the key to your liberation. Not just sexually, but emotionally, creatively, spiritually. The person who integrates their sexual energy does not become a slave to desire. They become its master. And in that mastery, they gain access to something few ever do: the full range of their being. So ask yourself now, what have you been afraid to feel? What part of your power have you abandoned because someone once told you it was dangerous? And what would it mean to reclaim it? Not with ego, but with love. Because the power is not in the act, it's in the awareness. The ability to choose consciously, to feel fully, to connect deeply, to live truthfully. This is what Jung ultimately pointed us toward: the path of individuation, becoming your whole self. And to do that, you must walk through the places you were taught to avoid. You must face your shadow. You must make peace with your desire. You must bring your sexual energy out of the dark and into the light. Not to be flaunted, but to be honored. It is the bridge between your inner world and the world you build outside of you. And once you make that bridge sacred, you begin to transform. You become less reactive, more grounded, more compassionate, more powerful. You begin to love not from need, but from wholeness. You begin to create not from lack, but from overflow. You begin to live not from suppression, but from soul. Let's be honest. Most people will never do this work. They'll stay in the loop, repress, project, repeat. But if you're still here, it means something in you is ready. Ready to remember what the world tried to make you forget: that your energy is sacred, that your truth is not shameful, and that your wholeness is your destiny. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not dangerous. You are simply powerful. And that power, when reclaimed, becomes love in motion. So if this message spoke to you, let it move deeper than the mind. Let it echo in your bones. Let it call back the parts of you that you buried: the creative one, the passionate one, the wild one, the sacred one. They are not gone, only waiting. And when you welcome them home, your life will begin to change. Not because you added something, but because you stopped hiding who you are. The suppressed becomes sacred. The wounded becomes wise. The shadow becomes light. This is the path Jung showed us, and now it is yours to walk. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because the truth is not waiting for you at the end of your journey. It has been inside you all along. Thanks for looking.